to raise a fee, but people just were like crazy. The banks closed. They locked the banks without notice, and your money was in there and you couldn't get it out.
Was this like in one day this happened?
No, but you didn't know what was going to happen. You could be worried about things, but then all of a sudden, I don't know what signal they used, the bankers were working together because a friend of ours worked in the bank, and she worried about one old couple that were friends of ours, Mike Burke and his wife, because he was poor. He'd been working since he was a kid, carrying lunch to men who worked on the railroad. He never hardly had any schooling. And she knew they were going to close the bank, and so she told Mike. And he drew out what little savings he had in there. Now, she could have been fired for that. But anyway, no,
So then suddenly people have no money, they cannot buy a single thing?
my dad was out of work for a couple of years. We sat and addressed envelopes sometimes. We'd get these boxes of envelopes, and you'd address them and return them to the company that hand addressed. We folded little...
Wait, for money?
Yeah, you got paid for doing it. Sometimes we folded flyers that people that they threw on porches. Maybe Rob did it, I don't know. He started delivering groceries with a little wagon that he had. He'd get 10 cents for hauling a whole bunch of groceries up to the top of some hill where the people lived. He was just a kid, and he was starting to do something. My father had been in a machine shop, and there was no work. He had been a barber when he was young, but he said he couldn't go in and cut hair now, you know. Styles were different and everything. So there was really nothing you could do much. My mother made clothes for us. She even made boys' shirts and stuff. She made a coat for me.
Okay, what years was this? How old were you?
Well, I graduated at 33. The Depression was, let's see, I forget the exact years of the Depression. It was 36, 37, somewhere in there. But, I mean, men who were good workers, their shops just closed. And it was, and so Roosevelt got elected, and he started projects, the homeowner's loan, to loan people money so they could, their houses wouldn't be falling apart, roofs leaking and everything, and they couldn't fix them. So the homeowner's loan opened in Warren, and this attorney that I worked for was connected with it, and he said he recommended me, so I worked in that office for a little while, less than a year. Then this job opened at the Forest Service, so I transferred and went to the Forest Service. And I was there 3 or 4 years. And I was a chief stenographer, and I saved money, and I bought my first car. We'd never had a car. My dad never drove a car in his life. So I bought my car. And then I took civil service exams, and you get opportunities. You get job offers, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and I got this one for Washington, D.C., and I decided I wanted to go. My mother she would hardly talk to me. She was so upset with me and so unhappy. You don't know anybody in Washington. You're going to go down there, but I had to go. Rob was home from college now. He'd had his 4 years away from home, and he was home and got a job.
But so you never thought about going to college. That wasn't like something.
No, I was into the bookkeeping secretarial field, and I was very good at it. I don't mind bragging about it. It was one thing I excelled at. So I did well in the civil service. I went down there, and they put you in a great big stenographic pool. There were 30 girls maybe who came in from all over. And a woman sat up at the desk who'd had polio. She couldn't walk. But as work came in from all over the building, she would parcel it out, and you did the work, brought it up and put it on her desk, and she checked it and sent it wherever it went. So she gave me work from the budget office, which was right on that first floor. This is the North Interior building, a great big building in Washington. So they liked my work in the budget office, and they needed a girl in there, so I went in, and there were like 3 men who worked on. Now this was the housing authority. This was for, it's HUD now, but it was the United States Housing Authority, and they were building houses for people all over. And that's where I left from that office. I had been there 3 years maybe. The man that was my boss had worked all over the world. He was a white-haired guy. He'd even been in Japan. He'd been with the government for many years. He was the director of the budget for the whole housing authority. And I was really good at figures and at setting up big statements with how many columns. I'd use a long carriage machine and set up all these figures. So I worked for him, and that's where I retired from, the director of the budget. So...
Wait, retired, are we talking about DC?
Uh-huh.
Right, well, but you went and worked later in your life.
I worked at Vickers for 16 years out here, but down there I was, and my friend Grace, my best friend Grace, the girl from Chicago, her boss was over personnel and everything. She was very sophisticated. She was 33, and she had been around. She left Chicago because she was involved with a married man, and there was no answer to that. So she finally left there and came to Washington. So she was kind of my mentor, but she had always been with the wrong people.
You mean dated the wrong people or even friends?
Been involved with people that she couldn't really marry.
Oh.
My mother used to worry about that because she knew that Grace had a history. I told her, I guess, how else would she know? But Grace was a wonderfully sophisticated, elegant kind of person. She'd go to New York and get a perm and get some new clothes and come back all fancy. She said Washington was like a small town.
Yes, they still say that today.
She said
they still say that today.
She was from Chicago, and there they had style, and it was a city.
Mm-hmm.
So Washington is just like a...
They still say that. That hasn't changed.
Well, people
from cities and who've spent a lot of time in New York still say that about it.
Well, she would go up there. She was worried one time that she was maybe pregnant. I shouldn't say this because she's dead.
Well, she probably wouldn't care.
Well, I say she had the misfortune.
It surprises me that you had a friend that was so, we'll call it liberal.
Well, she was sophisticated.
So it didn't bother you. That she was
she
kind
had to
of
walk through my room to get into her room. Her room was like a sun porch upstairs at the back of the house, and the bathroom was here. So she came through our room to go to the bathroom, and we knew each other pretty well because my roommate was here. her name, we called her Tiny because she was 6 feet tall. She's a great big girl. And then Grace's room was the sun porch. And when you live that close, you pretty much know what goes on.
Well, did she have men over and spend the night
No.
and walk through your room?
She got involved with a man who lived in the house.
Oh. Oh.
His name was O'Brien, Dick O'Brien. He was a fine man, but his wife was insane and was in an institution. And the law was you couldn't divorce your husband or wife if they were insane. He couldn't get a divorce because his wife was insane. He had a son. The son lived with him. They had 2 beds and lived.
What kind of privacy did these people have?
None at the house.
Oh.
Whatever they did off premises.
Oh.
But Grace and Dick O'Brien, he was an older man. He had white hair, actually, but he wasn't.
Oh, really?
Prematurely white hair. He was a fine man. And his son was about 10 or 11. And so, no, I didn't pay attention. She came in when she came in. Who knows? But they didn't do anything there because they lived.
So what do you think what do you think about you attracted her?
She loved to ride the car. Actually, I drove her back and forth to work.
Oh, okay.
Because we lived in the same house and I had a car, so she didn't have to take the bus or something.
Okay.
Another girl from the house, but I didn't drive her. I used to just take Grace. I don't know. Mary Brandt. She worked in the personnel department, and the day that I started work, I didn't apply. I said, I don't know where I'm going to go tonight. And she said, I think there's a vacancy where I live. And she called and checked on it. So the very first day that I started work, she went home with me. I had stayed the night before in a terrible, terrible rooming house on the first floor of a building, and the windows were open, but we didn't have air conditioning. The windows were open because it was hot, and I could hear people in the street and all. I hardly dared go to sleep. I put my wallet under my pillow, and I just waited for morning to come. So the morning, I put all my stuff in the car, my suitcase and everything, and went into work. I didn't know where I was going to sleep that night.
Oh, so you didn't get a place ahead of time or anything?
You couldn't. I called the Business of Professional Women and different places. They were all booked because the King and Queen of England, the parents of the present, the grandparents of the present Queen, I guess, were coming that Monday or something. And there wasn't a room at the Y.
Oh.
The YW.
Everything, people were coming to be there.
Over because the King and Queen were going to be here. And this just happened that way, of bad luck, you know. I belonged to the Business of Professional Women in Warren, where I was working. The woman that I took singing lessons from was the president of it, and I was the vice president. And so she told me to contact Business of Professional Women. They have places for women to stay. But when I called, they were booked. So I left that day and went to Washington, not knowing where I was going to sleep that night. And it's like a 300-mile drive. So I got down there, started driving around looking for rooms for rent signs, and finally found this place. But like I said, it was the first floor, and I could hear people laughing and going by at night, and I just prayed and waited for morning. And I took everything with me. I thought I'm not going back to that place again. So when I was at the office and personnel, and Mary Brandt said I could go home with her. I did.
And that was the place you ended up
Elva
staying?
had her. I stayed there the whole time I was in Washington. It was just
Would they feed
God
you?
was with me all the way, huh?
They would, the place, did they feed you? Did they provide
Yeah, we got
meals?
breakfast and dinner.
Okay.
Breakfast went with it, and dinner. And on the weekend, you were on your own.
Oh.
I don't. We maybe got breakfast Sunday morning. I'm not too sure of that.
You could use the kitchen or you couldn't?
Oh no, she had a cook. May
Oh.
was a big black cook, and her daughter uh, waited on table.
Oh.
May did all the cooking.
Oh.
Wonderful food.
Oh, wonderful
She did all
food.
the cooking, and her daughter waited on table, did the laundry.
Oh, so they did your laundry for
The
you.
laundry
Oh.
and cleaning.
I don't think they even have stuff like this anymore.
Probably not. We didn't. We didn't
Oh.
go down and use the laundry facilities.
Oh,
or
you
anything.
just, how'd they keep everybody's clothes separate?
I don't know.
You had a little bag and you put your stuff in it?
Yeah, we must have, because we didn't ever do our own stuff. I don't know. I suppose she washed during the day when people were at work or something. I didn't. Your bed would be made and it was done. We didn't have to clean or do anything. I didn't have a vacuum cleaner or anything. We did have an electric fan in our room that I would sit with the fan on me, because your face would be so wet you couldn't put any makeup on or anything. Beastly hot.
Yeah. That part probably wasn't too fun for you.
Washington.
Because it's even hotter, yeah.
Washington can be terrible. But no, because my friend Bessie, one of the girls at work, lived in a great big high building that was rooms downtown Washington. And the food was so terrible that she was sick. She was hospitalized a couple times for malnutrition. And then she met Paul Hines, who was a Marine, and she dated a lot of fellows. Bessie was a player. She got around. But Paul was just wonderful. He took care of her. And they actually, I think, well, I know they did. They moved in together before they got married. But the food was terrible. I mean, some places had cockroaches. There were awful.
So you just got lucky.
I was so lucky. Everything was, like I say, for me to go into work and have somebody take me home with her that night, and I stayed there the whole time.
They just happened to have an extra room.
She called and made sure that somebody had left, apparently, because I did have a roommate the whole time, the same one. I was always in that same room, but there was a bed. So that reassured my mother that I was in a good
Decent place.
The good food, and we could bring someone home for dinner
Oh.
once in a while if we'd have to pay for it. But Sundays we just got breakfast. Then you were on your own for Sunday, so we'd go out to any kind of a cheap place and eat the rest of the day. But no, the food was good. Elva used to have boyfriends, the landlady, but her room was in the
So you got exposed to a lot of things when you were down there that you probably hadn't been exposed to before that.
That's true. That's very true. I mean, I knew about them, but I hadn't lived with people like that. So we used to say, oh, we don't know who Elva's got downstairs tonight, But she was tolerant. She was a good...
That's kind of a weird name, Elva.
Elva Pagel, Pagell. She was divorced. But
Is that like an Italian name?
I don't know.
Pagel.
It was her married name.
Oh. Oh. She was divorced.
Uh-huh.
Did people get divorced then?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes.
Commonly? Oh.
Not as much, because people would say she's a divorced woman.
Oh.
It wasn't as common, but Alva was, and she had been friends. And we never met them, but they came and went. We knew they were down there, and I don't. It didn't matter. It didn't have anything to do with us. They had a separate side entrance and all that. We could have friends in.
Now, did she own that house?
Uh-huh. Big house. That was an investment for her. She owned the house. She rented all these rooms out, second and third floor, and she had a job. So
Oh.
she,
Oh. This was her other way of making
yeah,
money.
her business was her house, but she was a government employee.
And no kids.
But the whole time I was there, we had the same cook and her daughter, the maid. So it was kind of homey, you know. It wasn't like being with strangers.
And it was all women?
No, there were young fellows lived on the third floor.
But you never felt nervous about that?
No, I dated them, a couple of them. They were nice boys.
You never felt nervous like, oh, there's men in this house that are single.
No, they were young. They were young guys.
Oh, young guys never do bad things?
One
I think sometimes the young ones can be the worst.
There were two boys who were brothers, Frank Richardson and his brother Henry, were upstairs. And Frank liked me a lot, and he took me out, but the chemistry wasn't there. He had lost a finger in some kind of an accident, and his dad was in the Navy, and he desperately wanted to be in the Navy, but they wouldn't take him because of his missing finger, because he couldn't be a gunner or he couldn't do it. So he worked for the Navy department. He worked out the Navy Yard, but he couldn't be
an actual
an
serviceman.
enlisted Navy man. He had a Navy job. Yeah, I felt sorry for Frank because he was a nice, very, very nice man. But it was bothersome. I don't know if this is his right hand now, but it was noticeable. He was self-conscious about it. And, well, that's the way it was. He was the only one I dated from the house. There was another fella that ate there. Boys that lived in places close by, we had a couple from down south, where the heck, they were Alabama or Georgia. And they came there sometimes for Sunday dinner. And I went out with one of them some. I hadn't met Walt yet down there. So I was dating, and I dated the man that I worked for a while.
You did? Was that, like, now you're not supposed to do that. Was that normal then?
Well, I don't know if anybody even knew about it. His name was Frank Cawley. He was a graduate of Notre Dame and of George Washington Law School. He had 2 degrees. He was an accountant and a lawyer. Good looking, wonderful dancer. He was the catch of the whole place. So he didn't really
And he was
take me out
single.
seriously. He took me to see Gone with the Wind. When Gone with the Wind was made, and such a long movie that there was an intermission for it, he took me to that. But all the time, he had a real girlfriend, which I kind of didn't know about. But he was a graduate of Notre Dame. He was a Catholic. He was so good looking, such a good dancer. All the girls were crazy about him, but he really had a girlfriend. And he told me she wasn't a Catholic, and that bothered him. But one day he came in and announced he was getting married. And I just was upset.
Mm.
I told Grace I don't think I could keep working for him, you know.
Mm.
She said, you're going to go in to work if you have to go out and throw up every day. You're not going to quit your job because of this, you know. So, okay.
Ah.
He didn't invite me to his wedding. He at least had the good taste not to do that. But,
How long do you think you dated him for?
well, it wasn't a lot. He would, and usually it was on a Sunday. He didn't ever take me out Saturday night.
Mm-hmm. That's a sign right there. I should have. That's a red flag, Grandma.
See, Grace knew that.
Grace had more experience.
Grace knew her way around in that department. But, no, but he was respectful. He was nice to me. He was.
But you weren't like in love with
he
him.
He liked me.
Oh.
No, I was not in love. He liked me, and I think I was kind of upsetting because he was sort of committed to this other girl. And then finally, without notice, he didn't even tell me ahead of time, came in and announced he was getting married. And I just,
So, well, then you knew that he most likely had not been honest, right?
well,
Since he probably just wasn't suddenly marrying someone he didn't know.
there's nothing I could do. By now, I was working for Mr. Spencer, too. The man, they brought in this older man and made him the director of the budget. And I was in his office. So I didn't have to sit and take dictation from Frank anymore, because I was in another office. And Grace wrote to me after I was back here, married. Frank was going up, they called it going up on the hill. Wherever the budget place was, they had to take their budget stuff. And he was killed in an automobile accident.
Oh.
Yeah. Not too long after I was back here,
Oh.
he got killed. I don't know if he had a family by then. I can't remember. But he was the catch of the whole department. Everybody. I mean, he was good looking, smart, everything a girl would possibly look for, you know, in someone who was single, had 2 degrees.
Did you ever meet his wife or see her or anything?
No.
So you never knew what...
No, I didn't. I went to a party one time where there were all secretaries and women. I don't know what all. But I don't think his wife was there. One of the girls asked me, what college did you go to? And I had to say, I never went to college. I think I was probably the only one in the room who hadn't.
Oh.
I just went to high school. She assumed that I was like the rest of them, with a college degree. It didn't bother me very often, but I was always aware of it, that I just had a high school degree. But I have to say I was a natural. Before my last year of high school, there was a big contest. I don't remember what, up in K or where it was, put on by a business and professional college. Don't remember which one. I would think of it if my brain was still there. And all the high schools from northwestern Pennsylvania came to this. They sent their 2 top students in bookkeeping shorthand stuff. And we competed all day long, somebody dictating and us transcribing it. I went for both bookkeeping and shorthand, and I won first place in that. So that's one reason I always got along well, because I was good at it. I could take dictation and transcribe it. faultlessly. But that was my skill. And I mean, when you know you're good at something, you know it, even if everybody else doesn't know it. I mean, I had confidence because I knew that I could do well.
But you didn't have to go to a special school to learn that stuff?
No, that was in our high school. The last 2 years,
Oh.
you would decide if you were going to take commercial or engineering type stuff
Oh.
or just general. Now, general would just be, math and English and like that.
Mm-hmm.
If you were going into engineering, then you took all the higher math. See, I never took anything beyond second degree algebra.
Mm-hmm.
I never got into, and I didn't take physics, and I didn't take the college preparatory. There was a general, it's called general, where you just took everything a little bit. There was college prep, and there was the commercial, and I was in the business and commercial.
Mm. So you learned all those things in high school.
In high school, bookkeeping, algebra. Algebra we had for 2 years, then we didn't go into calculus or anything higher than that. So I just had a good math, so you could do a profit and loss statement. You had to set up profit and loss statements and to do all that, and write business letters, and be very good at shorthand and typing. So that was my skill. My mother had been a bookkeeper for years for Singer Sewing Machine.
Oh.
And she wanted me to take a business course. So I took a correspondence course from somebody in Chicago for a year or so. But I said, I don't want to be a bookkeeper. I like to be a secretary. And
You like the words more than the numbers kind of thing? Or no? It didn't have to do with that.
well, bookkeeping, my brother, was a whiz, and so he became an accountant.
Okay.
He went to Duquesne University, and I knew that they couldn't afford to send me too. I mean, he was 2 years ahead of me. We couldn't both be in college, not with my folks' income. So I knew from the get-go that I was going to have to get a job. And Rob had 2 more years of college. So when he got home, then I knew I could go.
You could leave.
I didn't leave until he was home from college. Yeah, and I thought, okay.
Now your mom can focus on him or something, and she won't be thinking about you as much?
They wouldn't be just alone, the two of them.
Oh.
And he'd been gone 4 years, and I had looked over Warren pretty much, and I didn't see any great future there, and I had an itch to go somewhere. So I would get these, after you take civil service exams, then you get offers from Philadelphia, from Arkansas, or anywhere, because you're in the process. When your name comes up, they send out an offer to three people, and when someone takes the job, then that's off the list. And I had offers before that to go to other places. That wasn't the first chance I had. When I got the thing from Washington, I thought, well, that sounds interesting. I think I'd like to work in Washington. I could have left home earlier if I had taken one of the other jobs.
Yeah.
But now Rob was home, so I decided I could go somewhere now.